Hey everyone, it's Fact and Figures, and today I have some ideas on how to have a comfortable conversation. Conversations can sometimes be difficult. Good conversations simply depend on good back and forth flow. When you understand the flow, you will have easy, successful conversations. Conversations change by nature. There are usually high points and low points. For example, when a comedian begins his act, he uses his best jokes. He will likely end his act with his second best jokes. The best jokes are what you call conversational high points because of how well they are understood by the audience. Conversation high points exist because they allow another person to feel emotion. That emotional connection is what makes conversation good or bad. Feeling a sense of shared emotion allows for a connection between you and another person. These connections are the most memorable part of the conversation. A conversation connection could be a joke, a similar experience, or a common interest. These are memorable high points that show a strong mental connection. To have a good conversation, the first step is to identify the conversation high points. But how do you know the high points of a conversation without already having the conversation first? A shortcut for this is going to be thinking about what is most important to you. What are you most interested in, or what do you feel most emotional about? That will automatically be the high point. Feelings of intensity or strong interest define the high point of the conversation. When you've identified the emotional high point in the conversation, you must not let it go to waste. To keep the flow of the conversation, you are going to call back to this high point that you just discovered. Here's an example. You are talking to William at your work about dogs, and he indicates that he loves husky dogs. Later in the conversation, you move on to good parks to exercise in. You bring up the fact that you see husky dogs and their owners at the park all the time. You just gave William an emotional connection to the conversation because you know he loves husky dogs. Here's another example. In having a conversation with Carrie, the high point that was shared was a hatred of limited parking, especially in bad weather. The current topic of conversation is how bad the rain is today. Your callback is now parking in bad weather. You say to Carrie, "When it rains, I always park in the back next to the loading zone. It's so much closer and you won't get wet." You just made an emotional connection to Carrie because she hates limited parking and getting wet. This conversation technique will always work in your favor because you will come off as an extremely attentive, observant, and clever person. You're borrowing emotions from the high points of the conversation and calling them back at a point in the conversation that has low energy. You're keeping the conversation interesting and alive. In the mind of the person you're talking to, the conversation never gets slow and you become an interesting person. In reality, all you did was identify a high point and recycle that high point in your conversation. Great conversation is the mastery of this back and forth process at a comfortable pace. If you have any thoughts about giving compliments, please leave a comment below. If this video was helpful to you, please subscribe to Facts and Figures.